Catch the wave. You're listening to Wayvve Radio, your home for uplifting gospel music.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown, and we are here to help people reach their defined level of success by what? Discovering and developing their gifts. And today is Triumph Tuesday. Yes, it is. See, this week we are talking about systems. Not surface systems, not motivational systems. We are talking about operational structure, sustainable leadership, organization maturity, scalable execution, and systems that protect vision. Yesterday, we exposed a powerful truth. Many people are running on effort instead of systems. Today, we go deeper because many leaders are exhausted for another reason. What's that reason? I'm glad you asked. They became the system, and everything depends on them. Flow through them and stop without them. And many people wear that like a badge of honor. But now today, we expose a difficult truth. The hero complex is breaking your system. Yes, I said it. Your hero complex is breaking your system. And let's look at Exodus 18, verse 17 and 18. And we're going to stick with this scripture all week. And Moses' father-in-law said unto him, the things that thou doest is not good. Thou wilt surely wear away both thou and this people that is with thee. For this thing is too heavy for thee. Thou art not able to perform it thyself alone. And listen to this. He said, it's not good for you nor the people. See, Jethro, he knew something Moses didn't know. Moses couldn't be the system. See, Moses had vision, Moses had leadership, Moses had responsibility, and Moses had a calling. But he was carrying institutional weight personally. And Jethro recognized something Moses could not see. The problem was not passion, the problem was structure. You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown. Go tell a family member and a friend to tune in to Wayvve Radio because this show is going to be life-changing.
Join us on this heavenly journey, one song at a time, Wayvve Radio.
You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown, and this is Triumph Tuesday, and we are talking about the hero complex is breaking your system. See, the hero complex feeds noble. The dangerous things about the hero complex, it is that it often feels honorable. People think, I care more, I'm responsible, I just want excellence, nobody else can do it right. But many times that mindset slowly creates dependency. See, some leaders subconsciously attach their values to being needed constantly. They feel important when every problem needs them. Every decision requires them. Every workflow depends on them. That creates emotional attachment to overfunctioning. And eventually, their identity becomes tied to being indispensable. That's dangerous leadership psychology because organizations should not depend on one person's constant emotional and operational involvement to survive. Being needed everywhere is not always leadership maturity. Sometimes it is system failure. You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown.
You're riding the waves of faith and grace on Wayvve Radio.
You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown. Thank you for joining me on this Triumph Tuesday. You built a cage of dependency. Many leaders think they built an organization, but what they actually built was dependency. Everything flowed through them. Everything stops with them. Everything waits on them. Everything depends on their involvement. That's not sustainable structure. That's operational fragility. And fragile organizations eventually collapse under pressure. Many leaders unknowingly become what? The single point of failure. Meaning, if they stop, everything stops. That's dangerous because sustainable systems should continue functioning even when leadership is not physically involved in every detail. If your absence creates chaos, your organization has operational doubt. Many leaders are exhausted because they built the cage of dependency around themselves, and now the growth they prayed for is crushing the structure they failed to build. You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown.
Stay tuned and stay blessed here on Wayvve Radio.
You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown, and we are talking about the hero complex is breaking your system. Let's talk about the ego of usefulness. Some leaders are addicted to being needed. That sounds harsh, but it's real. Helping people creates emotional rewards. Fixing problems create emotional rewards. Being the go-to person creates emotional rewards. Over time, leaders can unconsciously connect their self-worth to their level of involvement. See, this creates control issues, overcaring, emotional overfunctioning, unhealthy attachment to centralization. And eventually, the organizations become emotionally dependent on one personality instead of operational stable through structure. That's dangerous. See, because leadership should not create dependency on personality. Leadership should create systems that survive pressure and scale beyond one person's capacity. See, some leaders are not building sustainability, they are building emotional dependence. You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown.
Stay tuned and stay blessed here on Wayvve Radio.
You're listening to the Afternoon Praise on this Triumph Tuesday. Let's go back to this, and I talked about this yesterday. Moses was the bottleneck. See, Moses loved the people. Moses cared deeply. But Moses became the bottleneck. Everything depended on him. Every case, every judgment, every issue, every conflict. And Jethro immediately recognized this structure was unsustainable. And if you don't know who Jethro is, that's his father-in-law. Let's look at it. Let's look at Exodus 18, verse 17 through 18. And Moses' father-in-law said unto him, the thing that thou doest is not good. That's powerful, people. Because Jethro did not criticize Moses' passion. He criticized the structure. Moses was trying to carry institutional weight personally. And eventually, the leader and the people would both suffer. See, Jethro did not give Moses motivation. He gave him system architecture. That's leadership maturity. You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown.
Stay tuned and stay blessed here on Wayvve Radio.
You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown. And let's talk about heroic leadership does not scale. See, many people are trying to scale heroic behavior. That does not work long term. Organizations cannot sustainably grow through emotional heroics, constant rescuing, emergency management, and reactive leadership. Why? I'm glad you asked. Because human capacity has limits. Eventually, exhaustion appears, bottlenecks appear, inconsistency appears, emotional fatigue appears. That's why scalable organizations rely on workflows, systems, protocols, governance, and operational structure. Healthy organizations remove unnecessary dependence on emotional heroics. See, sustainable growth requires systems, not saviors. And many leaders are exhausted because they are trying to personally carry what structure was supposed to support. You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown.
Stay tuned and stay blessed here on Wayvve Radio.
You're tuned in on this Triumph Tuesday, and this is Wayvve Radio, and this is the Afternoon Praise. I want to thank you for making this show number one. Without you listening, I don't care if you're listening to us live, you listen to the replay on Apple or Spotify or YouTube, I thank you for being a loyal listener. But let's talk about delegation is not enough. See, many people think delegation alone solves dependency. It does not, because delegation without structure still creates confusion. Real leadership maturity is not simply giving people tasks. It's giving people frameworks. It's giving people clarity. It's giving people accountability. It's giving people operational expectations and decision-making structure. That's governance. Governance create environments where people know what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and own the responsibility. See, without governance, leaders still become the emotional and operational center of everything. And eventually, every delegated task still circles back to the same person. See, delegation removes task, but governance removes dependency. That's the difference between temporary relief and operational maturity. You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown.
Bringing the sounds of heaven 24/7, Wayvve Radio.
If you got a shout out or request, hit me up and I got you. I want to make sure that we are playing your music. And also too, go on the website. If you need prayer, we have a prayer team waiting for you to sing your prayer over, and we will make sure we will cover you in prayer. And if you want us to contact you back, we will. Just let us know on that form. Okay. But let's talk about constant availability weakens teams. Many leaders think constant availability makes them supportive, but sometimes it weakens the organization. Because if people never have to solve problems, think critically, make decisions, develop operational confidence, they remain dependent. That creates organization immaturity. Healthy leadership develops people. It does not emotionally overcarry them forever. And many teams remain weak because leadership keep rescuing them before growth can happen. That's why mature leaders create accountability systems. They create ownership systems. They create structure. They create operational confidence. People develop strength when systems requires responsibility. See, constant rescuing creates organization paralysis. Hey, you're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown.
Catch the wave. You're listening to Wayvve Radio, your home for uplifting gospel music.
You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown, and this is Triumph Tuesday, and we are talking about the hero complex is breaking your system. Let's get into emotional leadership creates operational instability. See, some leaders lead emotionally instead of structurally. Everything depends on mood, urgency, reactions, emotional energy, and pressure. That creates unstable environments. Because emotional leadership creates inconsistent execution. People never know what version of the leadership they're getting today. What standard exists today? Because they change every day. What expectations remain stable? See, healthy systems reduce emotional volatility. That's why systems matter. Systems create consistency, predictability, operational stability, and emotional clarity. Strong organizations are not governed by moods. They are governed by structure. You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown.
Catch the wave. You're listening to Wayvve Radio, your home for uplifting gospel music.
If you just tuned in, you're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I don't know where you've been, but if you just tuned in, I'm glad you're here, okay? I ain't gonna talk about you. I'm glad you made it. You made it. But if you just tuned in, we are talking about the hero complex is breaking your system. See, the hero complex slows growth. Many leaders think if I stay involved in everything, growth will stay healthy. But often the opposite happens. Growth slows because every decision's weight, every process bottlenecks, every workflow pauses, every approval requires one person. That creates operational congestion. Organizations become trapped under the ceiling of one person's bandwidth, and eventually opportunity outgrows structure. That's why operational maturity matters. Healthy system decentralize execution without losing accountability, because scalable leadership creates empowered teams. Scalable leadership creates clear workflow. Scalable leadership creates operational trust. And scalable leadership creates distributed responsibility. If growth cannot move without you, the system is too dependent on you. You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown.
Catch the wave. You're listening to Wayvve Radio, your home for uplifting gospel music.
You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown. Let's look at Acts 6. Acts 6 in the Bible. See, Acts 6 protected the vision through structure. And when you get time, go back. We'll go back and read it. But I'm gonna tell you what I'm talking about. See, Acts 6 reveals another powerful leadership principle. The apostles faced operational overload. See, the issue was food distribution. Now, they could have overworked themselves, micromanaged the issue, personally handled every complaint, but instead they created structure. In Acts 6, verse 2 and 3, the 12 called the multitude of the disciples unto them and said, "It is not reason that we should leave the word of God and serve tables. Wherefore, brethren, look ye out among the 7 men of honest report." That's operation maturity. The apostles protected vision, focus, sustainability. Through what? Through systems. Structure protected the assignment from operational distraction. That's powerful leadership. Go back and read Acts 6. Read the whole thing. But what I shared with you was Acts 6, verse 2 and 3. You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown.
Catch the wave. You're listening to Wayvve Radio, your home for uplifting gospel music.
You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. This is Triumph Tuesday, and we are talking about the hero complex is breaking your system. See, control and stewardship are different. Many leaders confuse control with stewardship, but stewardship does not require controlling over every process personally. That's fear-based leadership. Healthy stewardship creates systems, accountability, trust, governance, and operational oversight. See, some leaders refuse to release control because they fear mistakes, inconsistency, losing importance, losing involvement, or they are still dealing with what happened to them in the past. And really, probably what happened to them in the past, they saw the red flags and thought the red flags would fix themselves. That was the past show. But over control creates fragile systems, because eventually everything depends on one personality instead of operational structure. ownership does not require controlling every step personally. Healthy leadership creates sustainable systems that protect the vision long after the leader steps away from the room. So again, people, let me make this clear. Control and stewardship are not the same. They are different. You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown.
Catch the wave. You're listening to Wayvve Radio, your home for uplifting gospel music.
You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown, and I just want to talk about high-performing organizations reduce dependency. See, the strongest organizations in the world reduce unnecessary dependence on individuals. Airlines use checklists. Hospital use protocols. Toyota uses production systems. The military uses operational procedures. Why? I'm glad you asked. You asked a lot of questions, and that's good. But because systems reduce inconsistency, confusion, emotional over-reliance, and preventable mistakes. Elite organizations understand human limitations. Yes, people, we have limitations. That's why they build systems. They build safeguards, repeatable workflows, operational protocol. They do not rely on emotional heroics daily. Mature organizations place pressure into the protocol, not the personality. That's operational intelligence. I'm gonna say that again. Mature organizations place pressure into protocol, not the personality. You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown.
Catch the wave. You're listening to Wayvve Radio, your home for uplifting gospel music.
You're listening to the Afternoon Praise here on Wayvve Radio. See, let's talk about this. The hero complex create exhaustion. See, many leaders are physically present everywhere, but mentally exhausted everywhere too. Because overfunctioning creates emotional overload. They carry every problem, every emergency, every responsibility, every decision, and eventually the pressure becomes unsustainable. That's structural exhaustion. Not because the leader lacked passion, but because the infrastructure cannot support the weight of the vision. See, many leaders think, I just need more strength. No, you don't. No, you don't. Many times the issue is lack of operational structure. So you don't need more strength, you need more structure. Because you were never designed to personally carry institutional weight forever. You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown.
Catch the wave. You're listening to Wayvve Radio, your home for uplifting gospel music.
You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown. Y'all remember that song, I Want to Be Free? I know a lot of y'all really want to be free out there. But let me tell you something, how you can get free. So listen to this. Systems create organizational freedom. That's how you get free, people. You create a system. See, healthy systems create freedom, not restrictions. Systems free organizations from chaos, emotional dependency, bottlenecks, operational confusion, and reactive leadership. Healthy systems allow people to function confidently because expectations become clear. That creates anatomy, accountability, stability, and sustainability. Many leaders think systems remove creativity, but healthy systems, they actually protect creativity by removing unnecessary operational chaos. And I'm gonna say this again. Systems remove pressure from people and place it into the blueprint. And that's freedom. You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown.
Catch the wave. You're listening to Wayvve Radio, your home for uplifting gospel music.
You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. What Tina Turner say? We don't need another hero. People, Stop being the hero. Stop being the hero and be the leader. See, some leaders secretly feel valuable because everyone depends on them. But dependency is not the goal. Sustainability is. The goal is not constant, again, rescuing. The goal is not constant fixing. And the goal is not constant involvement. You want to know what the goal is? This is what the goal is. The goal is healthy systems. The goal is operational maturity. The goal is scalable structure. The goal is sustainable leadership. The goal is not to try to be a hero. And at some point, leaders must transition from firefighter to the architect, from emotional heroics to structural leadership. Because true triumph is not surviving through constant rescue. True triumph is building systems that survive without heroic intervention daily. Stop trying to be the hero and build the structure. You're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm your host, Demetrius L. Brown.
Catch the wave. You're listening to Wayvve Radio, your home for uplifting gospel music.
You're listening to the Afternoon Praise, and I thank you for joining me here on this Triumph Tuesday. Man, it's been great. It's been lovely. But before I close, let me just share this. Exodus 18, verse 23. If thou shalt do this thing, and God command thee so, then thou shalt be able to endure. Let's look at the word endure. Endure is powerful because systems create endurance. Many leaders are exhausted because they became the bottleneck. They became the workflow. They became the emotional center of everything. And now the organization cannot function without them constantly carrying operational weight personally. But now let's look at this. Healthy leadership, again, I'm gonna keep repeating this. Healthy leadership creates structure, governance, accountability, scalable systems, and decentralized execution. This week, we are learning system sustains what effort start. And today we expose the hero complex is breaking your system. Because emotional heroics do not scale. Dependency weakens organizations. Overfunctioning creates exhaustion. Centralized control creates fragility. If your absence creates chaos, the system is too dependent on you. And healthy leadership eventually learns. Stop trying to be the hero. Become the architect. Because sustainable organizations are not built on constant rescue. They are built on systems. I thank you for joining me on this Tuesday, and I will catch you tomorrow on Build a Brand Wednesday. Bring your listening ears, bring your heart, and clear your mind, because we're going to take you to a whole nother level. And again, remember, invite someone. Hey, you're listening to the Afternoon Praise. I'm out of here. Peace.
Stay tuned and stay blessed here on Wayvve Radio.